Rhaenys Targaryen, rider of Meleys the Red Queen, is known as the Queen Who Never Was. But why, and how close was she to becoming queen? Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we dive deep into the worlds of A Song of Ice and Fire, Lord of the Rings and The Witcher, as well as some other things when we get the time. Welcome. By the time of the Dance of the Dragons and the House of the Dragon TV show, Rhaenys Targaryen is already well known as the Queen Who Never Was, a title that, in the book, Mushroom claims to have invented. At 55 years old, when the Civil War started, she had already lived a full life, and obviously there will be spoilers here for House of the Dragons, so proceed with caution. She was born in the year 74 AC. After a tumultuous few years following the death of Aegon the Conqueror, the realm was at peace. King Jaehaerys I was on the Iron Throne, and he and his wife Alysanne were ruling wisely and producing a large family. After the tragic early deaths of their first two children, their third, Aemon, grew up to be their heir, Prince of Dragonstone and next King of the Seven Kingdoms. He married Jocelyn Baratheon, a good political match but seemingly also a loving one, and their eldest and only child was Rhaenys. Rhaenys, therefore, grew up as the only child of the undisputed heir to the Iron Throne, a situation not unlike Rhaenyra's later in the early years following her father Viserys' confirmation as heir then king. Many, perhaps even she, will have believed that she would one day inherit. Indeed, Queen Alysanne, when presented with baby Rhaenys, declared her our queen-to-be. You see, at this stage, the question of whether a woman could rule the Seven Kingdoms hadn't ever really been an issue. Aegon the Conqueror ruled rather than his older sister Visenya, but in practice the three of them co-ruled anyway, and she seemed okay with it. And after that, the throne was taken by an eldest son or by force. There hadn't really been a strong female candidate who claimed the throne. Some clearly thought that a woman could inherit, some clearly thought otherwise. Still, all that must have felt like a long way away as Rhaenys grew up. Her father was fit and healthy and could be expected to rule for many years after Jaehaerys died. She gained a reputation for being clever, proud and fearless. She claimed a dragon, Meleys the Red Queen, at 13 years of age, and married Corlys Velaryon when she was 16. At 18, she was pregnant with their first child. Whether or not she had planned it that way, the marriage to Corlys, that she seemingly organised herself, was a very strong political union. He was much older than her, but brought with him Valyrian heritage, the massive Velaryon fleet. His 9 voyages had turned his house into the richest in the land, and influence as the most well-travelled and storied Westerosi perhaps ever. But that was the moment things changed for Rhaenys' prospects. Her father Aemon had been on the island of Tarth fighting some Myrish invaders when he was hit by a crossbow bolt and died. The shot hadn't even been aimed at him, he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That meant that King Jaehaerys had to choose his new heir and Prince of Dragonstone, and at a time when everyone was still in shock and mourning for Aemon's death. He had been just 37 years old. Jaehaerys chose to promote his next oldest son, Balon, Rhaenys' uncle, rather than Rhaenys herself, or the unborn child she was carrying. No doubt Jaehaerys had his reasons. Balon was undoubtedly popular among the people, a strong and renowned fighter and leader, and already had 2 healthy sons, Viserys and Daemon, so the succession would be assured for another generation. Added to which, Balon rode Vhagar and wielded Darksister, and his oldest son would soon claim the legendary Balerion the Black Dread. The decision could be justified, but still, no one doubted that had Rhaenys been male, she would have been named heir instead of Balon. This caused deep rifts. Rhaenys' husband Corlys quit the small council. The Baratheons, Rhaenys' mother's family, were angered, and most notably Queen Alysanne was too. We read this. The most prominent dissenter was good Queen Alysanne, who had helped her husband rule the Seven Kingdoms for many years, and now saw her son's daughter being passed over because of her sex. A ruler needs a good head and a true heart, she famously told the king. A cock is not essential. If your grace truly believes that women lack the wit to rule, plainly you have no further need of me. and thus Queen Alysanne departed King's Landing and flew to Dragonstone on her dragon Silverwing. She and King Jaehaerys remained apart for 2 years, the period of estrangement recorded in the histories as the Second Quarrel. For the Maesters to call this a quarrel is a typical example of them underplaying things. This was a rift between ruling king and ruling queen that lasted 2 years and was never really settled. 2 of the other most powerful families in the land, the Velaryons and the Baratheons, were also angered and withdrew from public life for longer than that. And the fault lines resurfaced 9 years later when Balon, the prince who had been chosen instead of Rhaenys, also died. That's what led to the Great Council of 101. On the TV show, they kind of merged that with the earlier succession crisis, so it looked like it was between Viserys and Rhaenys, but in truth, at that council, Rhaenys' claim had largely been passed over already, because she was a woman. The question there was if, even if a woman could not inherit herself, the line of succession could pass through a woman to a man. Rhaenys had been the only child of the heir to the throne. Maybe she couldn't inherit, but could it skip her and go to her son Laenor? Or must the line of succession only ever pass through men? The Baratheons and Velaryons once more sided with Rhaenys and her son Laenor, and they were joined by the Starks, Manderleys and others, but the council overwhelmingly chose Viserys. This time, the rift seemed even more serious. We're told that Daemon had started amassing an army in support of Viserys had he lost, and Corlys was doing the same for Laenor. Thankfully, civil war was averted then. All of which, though, shows why Viserys' decision later to confirm Rhaenyra as his heir, rather than his son Aegon, was so controversial. Viserys himself was only on the throne because the realm had twice, clearly and deliberately, decided that a woman could not inherit, nor could the line of inheritance even pass through her to someone else. Simply put, under the succession rules he put in place, Viserys should not have even been on the Iron Throne himself. Rhaenys should have been. Which is why Rhaenys was known as the Queen Who Never Was. But what did she make of it all? Perhaps predictably, the maesters who wrote Fire and Blood don't really tell us, so we have to read a bit between the lines. We know that she was clever and capable and seemingly politically ambitious, if her choice of husband was anything to go by. We're also told that she was proud and had a fiery temperament, and that she had some very strong allies, so we might expect a strong response when she got passed over for the throne, but instead we just get this. Rhaenys herself was the first to raise objection. "You would rob my son of his birthright," she told the king, with a hand on her swollen belly. And that's it. 2 sentences, not even a recognition that she herself was being snubbed, just a simple statement about the son she thought she carried. I don't know about you, but I suspect the maesters have left quite a bit out there. Similarly, when it came to the Great Council of 101, we just hear that she and Corlys used their influence and wealth to try to win votes for their son Laenor, but nothing about her in particular. I do like how on the TV show she seems to have come to some kind of personal acceptance or understanding that she will never be queen. She doesn't seem bitter about it, just filled with a slightly world-weary wisdom for Rhaenyra that she won't be accepted either. As I said earlier, it's hard not to imagine Rhaenys seeing an echo of her own history in Rhaenyra. So perhaps beneath the fiery exterior there was a healthy streak of pragmatism. Perhaps she realised, or decided quite early on, that she could not change the way of the world. She could just make the best of her own position. So instead of pushing her own claim, she pushed that of her son, and when that didn't work, she pushed the claims of his children with Rhaenyra, even if probably they weren't technically actually his children. And she didn't inquire too much into the rather suspicious death of her son, and his widow Rhaenyra's very fast marriage to Daemon afterwards. Seriously, in the same calendar year Laenor died, she had remarried and the new couple had a newborn son. That's quick work. At any of these moments, Rhaenys could probably have reacted much stronger. She was a Targaryen, a dragon rider, married to a living legend in Corlys Velaryon. There were times she could have demanded blood or even pushed for civil war. She could have married her children to powerful foreign allies or engaged in sneaky plots to claim the throne for herself. But she never did. She always seemed to be the adult in the room, holding herself back out of sheer pragmatism or love for her family or, well, we aren't told. But then finally war did break out over an issue that will have seemed so close to Rhaenys' own experience, the oldest child, a daughter, being passed over for the Iron Throne in favour of a younger relative. And suddenly, Rhaenys seems to come to life once more. At that first Black Council meeting, Mushroom describes her entrance like this. With Lord Corlys came his wife, Princess Rhaenys, 55, her face lean and lined, her black hair streaked with white, yet fierce and fearless as she had been at 22. She is the first to say outright that they are at war, even though this is before any armies march or even the last peace emissaries have been sent. She urges an all-out dragon attack on King's Landing, suggests finding new riders for Vermithor, Silverwing and Sheepstealer long before Jacaerys, who usually gets the credit. Basically, Rhaenys, who for so long had stayed silent, in the history books at least, was now the chief champion of all-out war. Though, once more, she was here ignored. At that point, even Daemon was urging a less confrontational approach. But Rhaenys' own taste of war was not long to come. Soon after, the castle at Rook's Rest, an ally of Rhaenyra, was under siege. With Rhaenyra seemingly unengaged with the conflict at the time and Daemon elsewhere, she took it on herself, on Meleys, to come to its aid. It was a trap, though. Aegon on Sunfire and Aemond on Vhagar were there waiting. This is what happened. Princess Rhaenys made no attempt to flee. With a glad cry and a crack of her whip, she turned Meleys towards the foe. Against Vhagar alone, she might have had some chance, but against Vhagar and Sunfire together, doom was certain. The dragons met violently 1,000 feet above the field of battle, as balls of fire burst and blossomed, so bright that men swore later that the sky was full of suns. The crimson jaws of Meleys closed round Sunfire's golden neck for a moment, till Vhagar fell upon them from above. All three beasts went spinning toward the ground. They struck the ground so hard that stones fell from the battlements of Rook's Rest half a league away. Perhaps I am reading too much into the text, but this sounds like a woman who has finally had enough. She could have escaped, perhaps, or tried to. Instead, she flies her dragon straight for Aegon the Usurper's, knowing that she was outnumbered and would probably die because Vhagar was there too, and she does it with a glad cry. Why? Because here she was after decades of being marginalised and ignored, having men take what she saw as her birthright from her and her loved ones, having consistently stuck to pragmatism and resisted calls for civil war. She was backed into a corner fighting another woman's fight, and she had one chance to take out the man who must have symbolised so much of what had happened. Aegon, the second-born who took the throne promised to a woman. So she turns her dragon towards him with a glad cry. The fact that she does not manage to actually kill him, just badly damage him, is not really the point. It's that in these last moments, indeed, within that glad cry, I think we finally see what she had been holding back all those years. Rhaenys was the queen who never was, but she was majestic to the last. Did you know that I am also covering House of the Dragon and the wider world of A Song of Ice and Fire over on my second channel, IDG Live, with live streams, short-form videos and much more? If you'd like to check it out, there's a link in the centre of your screen now. Or for more videos like this on this channel, there's a link on the left of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.